Feels much more like the bottom.
Yes.
That's for sure. Definitely, it's always tough to lose on the road, but when you couple that with injuries and the way some things look to be shaping up, it feels like a double loss if that's possible.
Yeah, it does. And I guess let's not bury the lead, right? I think the biggest news here is, what happened with Saquon Barkley. The Giants announced on Monday that he has a torn ACL. He's going to undergo surgery, and he's going to get that fixed up. But obviously, he's going to be out for the rest of the year. Hopefully be back at full strength the way these surgeries go now. Hopefully by next year training camp, he should be good to go. 11-month recovery period. That sounds about right, given how it works these days. But, boy, it's one thing to start 0-2, again, 7 of the last 8 years. But then you get the kick in the you-know-what from Saquon going down, and it's like what goes wrong? Just everything goes wrong.
Yeah, it's just a major blow, schematically, how he was going to be used in this offense with Jason Garrett coming over from Dallas and just kind of looking at the running back production and how well he has used him in the offense. He was going to be a big part of it, and he was going to be the workhorse. So from a scheme standpoint and a production standpoint, man, I mean, that's tough. But then when you think about his ability, his playmaking ability, his acceleration, his ability to make guys miss, that's just, that's a skill that not every running back has. So they're certainly going to lose that aspect of it. And really, John, he has grown into a leader. I mean, this is his third year in the league.
He was voted the captain.
Yeah, you wouldn't know it by looking at him on the sideline and the way that he walks around both offense and defense. He is, he's been their fire starter. And I think with a young quarterback at Daniel Jones, he's probably taken on a little bit more of that, so that Daniel doesn't have to do that. But I think that's something that he's, naturally grown into and been a big factor for him. So to that point, the emotional aspect of it too, I'll say this, from a player's perspective, I don't know if there's anything tougher than coming in at halftime of a game and seeing your brother, a guy that you just trained with the whole offseason, worked out for a season, to get ready for the season, went through training camp with, and in the second game of the season, to see him over there on a training table, knowing that his season's over with and that it's an ACL, that's tough. It's tough to see that as a friend, as a teammate, as a brother.
And especially him, because he looks indestructible. You look at those legs, you're like, how could that guy ever
invincible.
get hurt?
Yeah,
right.
And he's the last guy that you would think would have a knee injury. To your point, given those those quads and how strong he is. So when you see that, it really there was an emotional aspect to that too, of the team going into halftime, and what you hope is that kind of becomes a, hey, not to go cliche, win one for the Gipper, but look, let's realize. Even Saquon is one play away from everything changing, everything for the season and for your career changing. And, look, you could look at the defense and look at the way the offense kind of came to life in the second half. The defense pitched a shutout in the second half. So, they were trying to get that win, obviously, to get the first victory of the season. But obviously you see Saquon and you say, hey, man, we're going to go out there and we're going to win this game in your honor. So, there's definitely a ripple effect there.
To your point, Sean, the Giants do a real nice job in the second half, and it was really a tale of two halves, right? You had the first half, the Giants got outscored 17-0. The second half, they come back, they outscore the Bears 13-0, and they basically look like different teams on both sides of the ball. And it shouldn't be a surprise. Giants lose the turnover battle in the first half 2-0. Win the turnover battle in the second half 2-0, and that tends to have a big impact on how these games tend to go, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think you have to give credit too for the defense, finding a way to come up with two big interceptions. James Bradbury was involved in both of them. So there's definitely things to build on with that. You almost felt like, John, that the Giants didn't lose that game. They just ran out of time, which kind of sounds funny to say that, but that last drive at the end of the game, I mean, they converted third downs. They converted 2 fourth downs. Daniel Jones had an unbelievable play with a guy hanging on him. He flipped it on 3rd and 3 to Dion Lewis.
That was very Tony Romo-ish, the way he pulled that.
A little Romo, little Brett Favre-ish, on Soldier Field, channeling some of that, the ghosts of NFL past. I think, when you look at the way that they finished that game, you mentioned it, they're 0-2 again. Here we are. Doesn't it feel different, though? I mean, it feels they lost 2 games that they were in it at some point, certainly Bears game right at the end, and for the Steelers, they were up, and they should have been up 17-3 on Monday night against Pittsburgh. So it definitely has a different feel at 0-2, but I think there's a lot of things to still build on. But offensively, when you look at the two defenses they just had to face,
yeah,
I mean, it's not. It can only get easier from here. The Steelers front with Bud Dupree and T.J. Watt and Alu and Cam Hayward.
Now you could say that because Nick Bosa's not going to play next week. If he was playing, it might not be easier next week.
Right, you're right. Yeah, Bosa's out. Solomon Thomas is out. So the 49ers goal rush is going to look a little different. But to go from that to the Bears, the Bears with Robert Quinn on one side and Khalil Mack, and then Akeem Hicks is a handful. And look, people sleep on Roy Robertson Harris. He is a monster with long arms. So those are two really good fronts for the Giants to cut their teeth on in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, no question about it. Look, they're very good. And what did you think about the offensive line play? Why don't we start there? You're the former offensive lineman. Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn were disruptive. Daniel Jones was sacked 4 times over the course of the game. 3 times, I'm trying to remember.
4 times.
So how do you kind of analyze what those guys did and how they played based on the results and just kind of what you saw in those one-on-one matchups throughout the game?
Yeah, sacks, there's always a story to each sack.
Sure.
It's never just, hey, this guy stinks and it's one guy. But
despite what the public tends to make of that, but yes.
And not all sacks are equal. Some of them are on the offensive line and some of them are on a quarterback that didn't see a hot route or, running back that missed a pickup, a blitz pickup. I'll say this. I thought there were times where you could tell that both Andrew Thomas and Cam Fleming were, they had their hands full. But I thought inside is where I think they can play better. I think Kevin Zeitler can play better. Granted, I mentioned Akeem Hicks he was going up against is a stud. He's powerful, but Zeitler is the veteran of that group. And, I expect him to play better. So there's definitely room for improvement there. I think Will Hernandez can play better as well. He had his hands full again 2 weeks in a row, but I think the one thing that keeps showing up front, John, is that they are struggling to handle the twists inside.
They are.
And there were a couple of times where I thought Will Hernandez did a poor job of shutting off the penetrator. When you have a TT twist, which is a tackle twist, the guy who has the penetrator has to shut him off. You've got to slam him down. You've got to stop the penetration before you think about the looper. And there were times where he just didn't do a very good job power stepping up and shutting that off. And what happens when you don't do that is that penetrator picks the center. And now you're on the different level from the center. And then as he picks the center, when you come off for the looper, now that guy is free because the center can't take over that block. So that mesh point is still not there and it's not where it needs to be. Now part of it is Nick Gates needs to figure out, hey, look, I've got to start having some awareness. Okay, it's 3rd and 9. I'm probably going to get a twist, so I need to get back. So part of that's on the center too. I'm not going to put it all on Will. You've got to, we say, get on the same level. You want to be like a picket fence. It's impossible to pass off a twist if you're on different levels. So you want to be a picket fence. Part of that is the center's got to get back on known twist situations. And the other part is the guard's got to shut off those penetrators. So
if you're on different levels, it's easier for the defense to kind of run almost like a pick play, right? And get the guys running into each other, and then you can't pass them off.
Yeah, absolutely. It becomes a rub route.
Yeah, correct.
On the line of scrimmage. And listen, it's not just, hey, with the centers uncovered. The Bears showed a lot of good different looks. And it looked a little bit like what Pittsburgh did. On 3rd down and 2nd down passing situations, they went with a 5-down look, which is basically saying, look, there is no slide. You can't help anybody out. It takes the chips off as well from a tight end. So you've got a center covered, both guards are covered, and the tackles are fanning out. And then when you run a twist game in that's the hardest thing to do as an offensive lineman. So they've got some room for improvement there.
Now, we saw 2 straight weeks. There was some miscommunication where there was a free rusher at the quarterback. This week, we watched the tape earlier. You had Pittsburgh sending 6 rushers, only 5 Giant players stay at the block. Obviously, that's not by design. That's not what you're looking to do. A lot of people are trying to point, Nick Gates, rookie center, he doesn't know how to direct the blocking schemes. But it sure looked us watching that tape that Gates was telling them to slide over to that side. So how do you evaluate some of those miscommunications on the offensive line? I know it's tough. You're not in the meeting room. You don't know what's being taught and what's being said. But I think it's a little unfair to point to the center and say, oh, boy, he's just figuring things out. It's all on that guy.
Yeah. The play you're talking about is, I think, a sack that Khalil Mack had.
Yes.
And he was unblocked, basically, which is really a head scratcher, because when you break the huddle offensively, you're saying, where's 52? Like, we got to find it. Guess what? I know we have to block him at some point. We're not going to ask a running back to block him
Right.
or a tight end. Like, that's crazy. So that front, it was a great defensive front by Chuck Pagano, because it was basically they kind of reversed the front. They slid the defensive line to the tight end side and then put a Will linebacker on the line, and they had a Mike linebacker that ran through the A gap. So
all three linebackers were almost to one side of the center.
they
on that
were
play.
to the weak side.
Right.
So we used to call that an overstack P. Everybody has their own nomenclature for how they want to call those fronts, but it was like a reverse under front. And so when you look at it, it's wow. Okay, you have 3 defensive linemen to the left of the center, and only 1 defensive lineman to the right. So they would have normally slid out to the left, but with the Mike linebacker running through the A gap, Nick Gates had to take him, which meant Will Hernandez had to take the nose guard, which left Khalil Mack basically one-on-one with the running back.
Because Thomas had to take the 3 technique on that side inside.
Right. Andrew Thomas had to take that defensive end inside, and so it looked to me like on that sack, Dion Lewis didn't know that was a linebacker, and that Khalil Mack, because he had his hand in the ground, he didn't know that was his guy. He thought because he had his hand in the dirt that the O-line was going to take care of him. So part of that is communication. You can't blame it on crowd noise these days. But
no, you can't.
that's the ripple effect of, look, Saquon Barkley is out, Dion Lewis is now out there, and he hasn't maybe gotten all those reps and hasn't seen those fronts. So it's correctable. It's something that I'm sure they're gonna go. Monday is always game corrections. It's always harder after a loss, but that's certainly one of the things they're going to be going through over there. Here's how we got to handle that, because guess what? We're going to see it again.
Daniel Jones, he's moved the ball 2 straight weeks against 2 good defenses, to your point, but he's also had the 4 turnovers in 2 weeks, which has been a big part of the 2 losses. Let's be honest. There's no reason to downplay that. So how do you look at the strengths and the weaknesses of how he's played so far, the positives and the negatives, and where he kind of has to go from here as he continues to try to improve in Jason Garrett's offense?
I keep seeing Daniel Jones every week just making some unbelievable gutsy plays, plays where you say, man,
he's not afraid.
No, I mean, it's just natural. Like, it's, either you can do it or you can't. And he's made some big time plays, some big time throws. I'm so impressed with his ability to complete a pass regardless of what's going on around him. I mean, he's got some real courage in the pocket, and he can make clean throws with a dirty pocket. So it's almost like his throwing motion is unfazed by pressure, whether guys are at his feet, at his knees, and he can't step into the throw. I've been really impressed with his accuracy from that standpoint. The turnovers, I know everybody's gonna go there and they're gonna say, hey, another fumble, and look, it's not his fault that on the 3rd play of the game, Robert Quinn beats Andrew Thomas and swipes at his hand as he's throwing the ball. He has no idea that that's happening. So you can't put that on Daniel Jones. He's trying to throw the football, but yet he's going to get credit for that fumble. I will say, I think I wouldn't be surprised now with Saquon being out if you don't see Daniel Jones running the football a little bit more. And I think the one area that they're going to probably need to use him in is the red zone, because 2 weeks in a row now, they've struggled to punch the ball in, and you can't win games if you're getting no points or just settling for field goals every single time.
All right, how about the defense? Final question, Sean. And then we'll do one quick one looking ahead to San Francisco. The defense, James Bradbury, I thought, has kind of been as advertised, big picture. Blake Martinez, I think, has been as advertised, big picture. The pass rush, they've gotten some pressure. I think Patrick Graham's used some very creative fronts to try to get some of that pressure into the backfield. Your just overall thoughts on the defense and kind of where they are after 2 weeks?
I think it's improved, and it doesn't show up in the wins and loss column, but you can't tell me when you look at this defense that they don't look more sound than what we have seen in the previous years. they seem to find a way. It feels like they understand the moments and the game situations.
I mean, they're also, frankly, just to be simple, Sean, there are no free runners everywhere. How many times the last couple of years you just saw guys like, all right, who is supposed to be covering that dude? And, like, nobody's there.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest keys of defense. Like, don't give up the big play.
Yeah, exactly,
like, you know
right.
If we give up a 10-play drive, like, so be it. Guess what? It's the NFL. We'll find a way to rally.
And if a guy makes a tough contested catch, you tip your cap. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I think – there's definitely been improvement with Blake Martinez at Mike. I think you mentioned James Bradbury. He's been phenomenal. I think he's a physical corner. So he's giving these wide receivers handfuls and fits. But he's also, I mean, man, even if they complete a pass on him, he's right there. I mean, he's knocking the ball down. 6 pass breakups already this season. And, this last week he was responsible for 2 of the turnovers. Yeah. So he's definitely a force. I think the pass rush, that's always been the biggest question this whole offseason coming into this year. Who's it going to be from? How are you going to get there?
By committee so far.
4 sacks by 4 different players in this game. So, yeah, to your point, it's kind of been a little bit of everybody. B.J. Hill, it was good to see him get a sack again. He had a really nice sack against Cody Whitehair, their center. You saw Blake Martinez get his sack. Kyler Fackrell got his first sack as a Giant.
Lorenzo Carter got one.
It was thanks to Dalvin Tomlinson getting some pressure, and then Lorenzo Carter got his first sack of the season. So those are all good things to build on. They're certainly going to need that. But the biggest thing is, again, as you start to look ahead to the 49ers, we've got to stop the run game. Look, the 49ers averaged over 6 yards a carry last week against the Jets. So they've got to find a way to slow that run game down, and Kyle Shanahan is definitely going to have some wrinkles for him.
All right, Sean, final question. Niners next week. I mean, like we don't have any idea what the heck this team's going to look like with all their injuries. They lose Nick Bosa. They likely to lose Solomon Thomas. Deebo Samuel's still not going to be there. Richard Sherman's still not going to be there. Raheem Mostert's out. Yeah. Jimmy Garoppolo didn't finish the game against the Jets. They're scared of the MetLife Stadium turf. I mean, who knows what the heck that team's going to look like next week?
Yeah, it's really looking like a MASH unit. They lost Deebo Samuel earlier on this year. With George Kittle being out, Jordan Reed has, really done a nice job stepping up. He had 2 touchdowns last week, and look, Giants fans know him. He's a very athletic tight end. I think the big thing with the 49ers and Nick Mullens is going to be the starting quarterback. It appears Jimmy Garoppolo has got a bad ankle sprain. So the big thing with Nick Mullens, and Giants fans remember him, from the Monday night game a couple of years ago out in San Fran when Eli was still the quarterback. Nick he's a capable quarterback. He can run the offense. He's very good at the play action stuff. They're going to move the pocket a lot. Kyle does that already with his offense.
Outside zone, play action, all that stuff.
Yeah, they're not going to ask Nick Mullens to throw the ball 45 times from the shotgun. No. So it's going to be they're going to try to stress that defense and run the football like you said, but they're going to move the pocket. It's going to be a lot of bootlegs, a lot of rollouts. So defensively, you got to be ready for that. You
got to be disciplined because all their stuff will look the same. Same deal with the Rams, right? The play action looks like the runs, and you have to be very disciplined in what you do.